Cham Vishnupad Param Savrachik Charishtotar Shatistvangri Savaicharan Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Cham Vishnupad Param Savrachik Charishtotar Shatistvangri Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Goswami Maharaj Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Ananta Koti Vaishnavrinda Ki Jai. Grantaraj Shima Bhaktam Ki Jai. Nitya Gaura Premanande Hare Hare. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Hare Krishna, today we are reading Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 3, Chapter 16, Chant which are cursed by the sages. And we're going to read text 30 and 31. Etat puraiva nirdishtam. Etat puraiva nirdishtam. Ramaya krudaya yada. Ramaya krudaya yada. Purapavarita dvari Vishanti Mayuparate Vishanti Mayuparate Itat puraiva nirdishtam Ramaya krudaya yada Puravavarita dvari Vishanti Mayuparate Tat puraya nidishtam Ramaya krudaya yada Puravavarita dvari Vishanti Mayuparate Tat puraiva nirdishtam Ramaya krudaya yada Puravavarita dvari Vishanti Mayuparate Itat puraiva nirdishtam Ramaya krudaya yada Avararita dvari Vishanti Mayuparate Itat puraiva nirdishtam Maya krudaya yada Avararita dvari Word to word. Etat, this departure. Pura, formally. Eva, certainly. Nirdishtam, foretold. Ramaya, by Lakshmi. Krudaya, furious. Yada, when. Pura, previously. Apavarita, prevented. Dvari, at the gate. Vishanti, entering. Mayi, as I. Uparate, was resting. Translation by His Divine Grace by Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. This departure from Vaikuntha was foretold by Lakshmi, the goddess of fortune. She was very angry because when she left my abode and then returned, you stopped her at the gate while I was sleeping. So text 41. Mai samramba yogena nistirya brahmahelanam pratyashyatam nikasham me karinalpi yasapanaha. The Lord assured the two Vaikuntha inhabitants, Jai and Vijay, by practicing the mystic yoga system in anger, you will be cleansed of all the sin of disobeying the brahmanas and within a very short time return to me. The Supreme Personality of Godhead advised the two doorkeepers, Jai and Vijay, that by dint of bhakti yoga and anger, they would be delivered from the curses of the brahmanas. Srila Madhva Muni remarks in this connection that by practicing bhakti yoga, one can become free from all sinful reactions. Even a brahmashapa or curse by a brahmana, which cannot be overcome by any other means, can be overcome by bhakti yoga. One can practice bhakti yoga in many rasas. There are 12 rasas, 5 primary and 7 secondary. The 5 primary rasas constitute direct bhakti yoga, but although the 7 secondary rasas are indirect, they are also counted within bhakti yoga if they are used in the service of the Lord. In other words, bhakti yoga is all-inclusive. If one somehow or other becomes attached to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, he becomes engaged in bhakti yoga as described in Srimad Bhagavatam 10.29.15, Kamam Krodham Bhayam. The gopis were attracted to Krishna by bhakti yoga in a relationship of lusty desire, kama. Similarly, Kamsa was attached to bhakti yoga by dint of fear of his death. Thus, bhakti yoga is so powerful that even becoming an enemy of the Lord and always thinking of him can deliver one very quickly. It is said, Vishnu Bhakta Smrito Daiva Asuras Tat Vipanyayaha. The devotees of Lord Vishnu are called demigods, whereas non-devotees are called asuras. But bhakti yoga is so powerful that both demigods and asuras can derive its benefits if they always think of the personality of Godhead. The basic principle of bhakti yoga is to think of the Supreme Lord always. The Lord says in Bhagavad Gita 18:65, Manmana bhava mat bhakta. Always think of me. It doesn't matter which way one thinks. The very thought of the personality of Godhead is the basic principle of bhakti yoga. In the material planets there are different grades of sinful activities, of which disrespecting a brahmana or a Vaishnava is the most sinful. Here it is clearly stated that one can overcome even that grave sin simply by thinking of Vishnu, not even favorably, but in anger. Thus, even if those who are not devotees always think of Vishnu, they become free from all sinful activities. Krishna consciousness is the highest form of thought. Lord Vishnu is thought of in this age by chanting Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. From the statements of the Bhagavatam, it appears that if one thinks of Krishna, even as an enemy, that particular qualification, thinking of Vishnu or Krishna, cleanses one of all sins. Om Jnanati Vrandasya Grananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manabhishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadate Svabarantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Uttapadakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sakrachatam Sahagana Rakunatam Vitam Tam Sachivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parichana Saitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahakana Lalita Shri Vishakan Vitamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dina Bandhu Chakatpate Kopisha Kopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostate Tapsa Kanchana Gorange Radha Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhana Sate Devi Pranamami Hari Priya Vancha kalpatarubhascha kripa sindhyava evacha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gaura Bhaktavrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, welcome everyone. Thank you for coming to Srimad Bhagavatam class this morning. So we're at the conclusion of this famous and very instructive pastime of the Lord and his devotees and to those who became devotees in the pastime, the four Kumaras, who were Brahmavadis initially, and cursing and everything. So you can tell Prabhu he can start setting up the yagya in the corner. We heard now in yesterday's verse. Actually, we talked 2 days on because and Friday already I talked on 28 and 29, and Prabhu yesterday I believe he also talked on 29. But no harm, because it was a very beautiful text and purport where the Lord told to Jaya and Vijaya that there's no need for them to fear, because actually everything what happened has his approval, which means even them cursing his devotees, for which they obviously felt very guilty, the Lord told them, it has my approval, which Prabhupada explained in purport, in other words, means that actually we can understand that the whole pastime was enacted by the Lord's will, so by his internal potency, not by any material contamination like material anger of the four Kumaras or disrespect on part of the Jaya and Vijaya in any material contamination. It was all pure because it was all enacted by the Lord's will. And so then in today's verses we hear he tells them further, he's still speaking, just checking, still speaking to Jaya and Vijaya, as far as I can understand, that actually he explains in text 30 of how, in terms of Jaya and Vijaya, how it would be possible that they would come down to the material world from Vaikuntha, which we know, Yat Gatva Nani Vartante. If you go to the spiritual world, there's no possibility of falling back down again. To make this foolish mistake of trying to imitate Krishna rather than serving him, it doesn't happen, but in this pastime it looks like it would, but obviously as we discussed, it's not a fall down, it's by the Lord's will. But he tells here a background also, in terms of pastime, that he tells that one time Mother Lakshmi, the goddess of fortune, when she wanted to try to come back in to the residence of her lord, of Narayan, then Jaya and Vijaya stopped her on even in that pastime, obviously as service, because they knew that the Lord is transcendentally sleeping, so they didn't want him to get disturbed. But she became angry at that time, and so she cursed them. So from that time already, actually, it was predestined also in that way. And then in text 31, the Lord explained to them how they will. Actually, that it says the Lord assured the two Vaikuntha inhabitants, Jaya and Vijaya, and then what he spoke. So here, then he's speaking to Jaya and Vijaya, his doorkeepers, that he's telling them that by practicing the mystic yoga system in anger, you will be cleansed of all the sin and come back to me very soon. So, we'll come back to that. I just want to briefly talk a bit on the purport and then look on the larger picture again. So, a few points Prabhupada is elaborating is about one significant thing here is that they were after all cursed by brahmanas, brahmashapa, which is very powerful. Like someone who is actually qualified as a brahmana, if he curses someone, then we see that many times in pastimes that nothing can be done about it. They might, if they appease the brahmana, then he might do some counter blessing to somehow alleviate the curse, but the curse cannot be nullified, even by the brahmana himself who tells the curse. So, but here we see that Prabhupada explains that it is the Lord is giving a blessing here actually, that by them doing for some time here, engaging in devotional service through an indirect rasa, in which is in extreme anger, as we know, as Hiranyakashipu, for example, with Lord Nrsimhadev, he had such raging anger, and all the different births they had like that, both of them. But even by doing that, Prabhupada is pointing out, curse of a Brahmana can be counteracted, can be overcome. Because the Lord says here that just by doing that, in a short time you'll come back to me. Obviously, another thing we can understand from here is that our material, especially in Kali Yuga now, our small conception of life and of time also, in comparison to what we see here in the Bhagavatam. Because we know very short time is relative in one sense, because after all, we know it's 3 births, and then those were in different yugas, and so it was like at least millions of years. But the Lord says, don't worry, in a very short time. So that shows, in relation to the ultimate, which is in being engaged in pure devotional service with the Lord, then everything else is very insignificant. Also, even spending billions of years in the material world. So, and then, also there's some famous examples in Bhagavatam itself about this curse of a Brahmana being overcome by the power of Bhakti Yoga, as Prabhupada explains here. Like in 9th canto, where Shukadeva Goswami is explaining about, in that section, I believe, about the descendants of Vaivasvata Manu, of our current Manu, in the 7th Manvatari that we are in. And one of them is called Prishadra, who himself didn't become the king, but what he was doing, he was serving his spiritual master, I believe Vasishta Muni, particularly he got the service of guarding a herd of cows during the night. So, somehow we see and Prabhupada points out there also that shows how exalted it is to actually properly protect and serve the cows, because Prishadra, he was an exalted kshatriya actually, coming in the line of Ikshvaku of Vaivasvata Manu. So, but that's the service he did to his guru very dedicatedly. But then one night what happened is that a tiger came, attacked, and it was pitch, there wasn't even proper moonlight, I guess, because it was really completely dark. So, as he was, I believe Prishadra, how he was doing it, he was standing on one leg or some, and the whole night out there. And then, so when he heard the sound of the tiger, he immediately ran there, and obviously thought he would kill the tiger, tried to kill him. But then it turned out, when it turned light, that actually he simply had hit the tiger, cut his ear, and instead he killed one cow. So then when Vasishta Muni found it out, he became very angry and he cursed him to, you're useless, you don't have discrimination, you don't have intelligence, so you shall become a Shudra in your next birth. And but then what Prishadra did, he just renounced everything, went to perform tapasya in devotional service, and he went back to Godhead, which shows that, devotional service is completely transcendental, even if someone is cursed by such a powerful Brahmana sage like Vasishta Muni, that it didn't matter. If his karma would have been to become a Shudra, but then instead he went back to Godhead. And so Prabhupada, he's then talking about the 5 primary rasas and 7 secondary rasas. And one example he gives there is that of Kamsa, that because direct, we are more familiar with, but as one of the indirect rasas. But we know, giant Vijaya, yes, the Lord's will was like that, and their desire also, that they serve the Lord in this indirect way, indirect rasa, but someone like a demon like Kamsa, he was actually a demon. He was not a devotee. So, but even they, as Prabhupada quotes here from 10th canto, one verse, and remember Narad Muni also similarly, he tells one verse in 7th canto on this topic as well, how even demons like Kamsa attained perfection by their indirect rasa. In his case, it was fear of death, because he was heard the what's it called? That the demigods in unembodied voice predicted. Akashvani, yeah. I was looking for the English word anyway. Doesn't matter. If something is predicted like that he was to be killed by the eighth son, was it, of Mother Devaki. And so his whole life he was always fully absorbed in thought of Krishna, but in not favorably, but in fear. And he was ready and trying to do anything and everything to get Krishna killed, as you know. But yeah, I'll come to that a bit later as well. So, and so that's the main thing Prabhupada points out here, that even just the power of thinking always of Krishna, as Krishna instructs, manmana bhavamat bhakto, and that when you always think of me, then naturally you will become a devotee, even if it is unfavorably. Obviously that's not our goal, but it just shows how powerful it is to simply absorb your mind in Krishna instead of any material things. And and Prabhupada concludes, as we chanted then the Maha Mantra at the end, that because that's in this particular age, that is the way especially of thinking of Krishna. Okay, so now let's look back again on the overall conclusion of this pastime, of like I explained how His Holiness Dimrita Swami Maharaj, when he was here, my Guru Maharaj, recently he explained that the two main reasons why Krishna did enact this pastime of getting his own devotees cursed by the Brahmana sages was because mainly twofold. In order to himself, he had the desire to enjoy fighting, and to teach all of us a lesson of how to be careful in Vaishnava dealings, especially to avoid Vaishnava parad. So, in terms of the first reason of enjoying fighting, further also, I was thinking of that whatever the Lord does, he always also achieves many things at once. He satisfies everyone perfectly. As we see here, for example, also not only did he himself enjoy and teach us a lesson, but also in course of that he made the four Kumaras his pure devotees from before they just had the impersonal realization of Brahman. And even Jai and Vijay, it's mentioned that they had actually a desire they were wondering how it would be to see the Lord because in Vaikuntha he's always smiling, peaceful, but how it would be like to see the Lord in his ferocious form of anger, as he is then as Lord Nrsimhadev and so forth. So they also had a desire like that. So he satisfied them, he satisfied the four Kumaras, and for all our benefit he's doing it, and himself he's the supreme enjoyer who is able to enjoy anything, and so he wanted to enjoy fighting. And like Guru Maharaj was pointing out that yes, he sometimes also fights with other demons, like as with Kamsa, as we're discussing today here also, but those are the most powerful demons who were like as ordinary jivas. But then the best fight you can get only from his devotees himself, because he can fully empower them to the maximum degree. Whereas by yourself as being an atheist, you cannot become as powerful, obviously, because it's even to become so powerful, we know they also have to please the Lord somehow, so they do severe austerities, but and only his pure devotees can do that to the highest degree. So, and so how the Lord fulfills and by his enjoying, he also does so many things at once. Like I mentioned on Friday, one famous example is of freeing the princesses from Narakasura, and by doing that, taking Queen Satyabhama with him, and then taking her to the heavenly planets to reclaim the stolen items from there, and taking the Parachata flower. So many things he did there, satisfying at once. And another example, of course, today we hear the purport about Kamsa also. How he's even satisfying the atheists. Like a famous example is in Chaitanya Charitamrita, where Sakshi Gopal, where Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he's, I believe, narrating this pastime to all the other devotees with Lord Nityananda as they are traveling on the way to Jagannath Puri. So, I'm not going to go into pastime now, but the point where Prabhupada explains this, that is when we know there's those two brahmanas who traveled on pilgrimage, a young brahmana and an elderly brahmana, and the elderly brahmana felt very obliged for the service he always received from the younger brahmana, so he insisted on, as a reciprocation, offering his daughter for in charity, like for marriage to this younger brahmana, and we know the younger brahmana warned him he shouldn't do it because he was poor brahmana, the other one was rich and aristocratic, but then he insisted, and when they then, after the pilgrimage, when he went back, then at one point the elder brahmana revealed it to his family, and they were very upset, not at all agreeable to this suggestion, so they instead went as far as his family members told him, if you do that, then we'll take poison. So the elderly brahmana was in a dilemma, and then when one time the younger brahmana came to his home to ask about, what's the plan about this, because he didn't care about getting this daughter in charity, but he just, because the elderly brahmana had given the promise even in front of Lord Gopal, who was to become Sakshi Gopal then in the past time. And so he asked him, and then the son of the elder brahmana, he had told him before atheistic plan of how to solve this situation, and then he when the younger brahmana came, actually he just blasted him, sent him away initially, and then the younger brahmana gathered all the villagers, came the next day again and presented the situation, but then the son of the elderly brahmana, with word jugglery, he made up a story of how the younger brahmana was just after the money of the elder brahmana, and then on top of this now he is asking for the daughter, like that, and then when it comes to the point that the younger brahmana suggests that like telling that yes, but he has promised in front of Lord Gopal, so then what if I bring him as a witness, and then that's the point where Prabhupada explains that the elderly brahmana, as an atheist, he was thinking, okay, this state is so far away, if he can be a witness, let him do, because he didn't have faith, and of course both the brahmanas, they had firm faith, they were pure devotees, and so they were very satisfied, obviously. So here the Lord satisfied also even the atheist. And also another example is of, I heard from like old lecture of my Guru Maharaj on the Krishna book, where we see before the killing of Kamsa, because today here we hear about Kamsa also, when Krishna and Balaram, we know they, having been brought by Akrura to Mathura, then they were invited into this wrestling arena by Kamsa, and the whole thing was set up, obviously, by Kamsa to get them killed. Like even again, when Narad Muni had told him, then again he had sent more demons, like the horse demon. What's his name? Kesha demon, and and then then he sent this most powerful elephant Kuvalayapid before they would enter, whom Krishna killed as well. But at the beginning of this chapter 43, killing of the elephant Kuvalayapid. So I want to just tell a few points from there, because that also shows very nicely of how Krishna, because today also in text 30 we hear how Krishna was, or Lord Narayan in that case, was sleeping, and that's why the giant witch had stopped Lakshmi Devi at that time. And and obviously sleeping is something in the material world. It's not like something we decide. We just want to do it for pleasure. We might ignorantly enjoy it as well, but it's forced upon us. Then material body has to go through these phases of Jagrati, wakefulness, Svapna, dreaming in sleep, or deep sleep, Sushupti. But obviously the Lord sleeping has nothing to do with those three phases of material consciousness, but his is always transcendental consciousness, including sleeping. So even sleeping, he sleeps because he enjoys it. So he is fully conscious of sleeping, of enjoying this activity. So talking on the Lord as the supreme enjoyer, and how he's satisfying many different people at once, because for us it's in terms of how the Lord is doing so many things at once. It's something to meditate on, because it, from our side, it really gives us better appreciation of how Krishna is the Supreme Lord and the Supreme Enjoyer, and how there's no point to be envious of him and to try further to enjoy separately from him, because it's just our attempts are so pathetic compared to his transcendental enjoyment. Just as when we see how he is able to accomplish so many things at once, and we know for him there's zero struggle, there's zero work in the sense as we would have, but it's all pastime, it's all full enjoyment for him and for all the devotees and everyone concerned. Whereas for us to achieve just little things, we have to work so hard and still might not get the result. And also in terms of satisfying others, how, as we see the Lord, he's satisfying so many by one simple act. But for us, even if we try to satisfy just one other person, we might not be able to. That's why, especially in Kali Yuga now, we see how it's so hard to keep good relationships, because we just feel no matter what I do, the other person is never fully satisfied anyway. So what's the point even of trying? Better just be fully selfish. And one reason is obviously because we see how now in Kali Yuga the atmosphere is so charged with gross sense gratification that all our senses, they're just raging after, is that the right word? But, looking always for sense gratification and having no concept of satisfaction with simple things. 2 weeks ago I think I got to speak a bit also where I mentioned about on the pastime of Lord Vamanadev, how he instructed Bali Maharaj on this principle of satisfaction. And this whole, and it's not all, obviously pure devotees, they realize it to the full degree, but even we see in Vedic culture, even on the Varnashrama platform, actually that it is there, even for Shudras, what to speak of then on the higher Varnas and the ashramas, of how to be satisfied with whatever is your duty and whatever is ordained for you to get by the Lord, according to your karma. Everyone has knowledge of that, of the law of karma, and therefore of being satisfied with whatever comes of its own accord. We see many times in Bhagavatam this word yadrichaya, which means by out of its own accord, or in other words, out of the Lord's mercy according to your karma. That's one of those verses that Lord Vamanadeva spoke to Bali Maharaj. where it says, the first line is Yadricha ya upapannam santushto vatate sukham, so that whatever comes of its own accord, whatever you achieve, you're satisfied with that. So it goes, Yadricha ya I'm missing something now. I'm missing one word now, but anyway, Yadricha ya upapannam santushto vatate sukham na santushta stribhya lokar. Not satisfied with the three walls. 2 weeks ago, and I don't remember it already properly. Anyway, what he says in the verse is that, if you're satisfied with whatever comes of its own accord, you're always happy. You always have happiness. Whereas, if you, achitatmo pasadati, if you have not conquered your senses, then even if you attain the three worlds, you won't be satisfied. And Narad Muni in the 7th canto, you're also on that. No, I'll come back to that. So now, what I said about now looking in terms of the Lord's achieving so many things and always being the enjoyer and satisfying everyone, even atheists. So here, when he with Krishna and Balaram, it's mentioned. So on that morning of where they were then about to go to the wrestling arena, they at one point they could hear the beating of the kettle drums in the wrestling arena. And again now consider how Kamsa took so much effort to arrange this whole thing just to try his everything, which included like he himself was such a powerful demon that he had subdued so many other demons whom he had sent so many times before, trying to kill Krishna and Balaram, and here again also like engaging all these most powerful wrestlers, and before that sending the elephant, and so this whole thing is like that. But then, what's the perspective of Krishna and Balaram? Prabhupada writes here. So as they were hearing that, they immediately prepared themselves to proceed to the spot to see the fun. So everything was arranged for their killing, but from their perspective, obviously, they're not afraid of anything. For them, it was, again, the highest pleasure. And so when they reached there, then they were welcomed by Kubalaya Pete, who was charging at them. And then, obviously Krishna, he killed the elephant. Even there we see, like, at one point, he lies down right in front of Kubalaya Pete, which is crazy in one sense, if you would think that this most powerful elephant, with his huge legs, he could just easily trample him. But then obviously it's Krishna, so it was just play. So what happened then was that he already moved so quickly away that the elephant was still thinking he's there, and he was actually smashing with his tusks in there, that he got himself stuck in the earth. And anyway, then eventually Krishna killed the elephant and plucked out the tusks, took one for himself, and Balaram took the other one, and that's how then they proceeded. And that also, again, Prabhupada so beautifully describes there how how Krishna is the most attractive and the supreme enjoyer. So after he killed the elephant, then Prabhupada writes, decorated with drops of perspiration and sprinkled with the blood of the elephant, he looked very beautiful, and thus he proceeded toward the wrestling arena. So again, it's such a natural, playful activity for the Supreme Personality of Godhead to, quickly killing the most powerful elephant in the world here, your beauty being enhanced by some sprinkles of his blood. You take one huge tusk, give the other one to Balaram, and then like that, it's when Prabhupada says, Lord Balaram took the other tusk of the elephant on his shoulder, accompanied by their coward boyfriends, they entered the arena. So like that, then they were happily continuing with the Gopas to proceed to the arena, which was meant for their death. And then another example here, obviously a famous one, of how we see how Krishna, generally we don't speak on the principle of satisfaction, but we can understand it from that perspective also, that as they entered in the wrestling arena, we know how all the different people saw them in different ways according to their relationship with them. That the other wrestlers saw them just like thunderbolts. Kamsa saw him as death personified, whereas all the women, they saw him as the supreme male. Their conjugal feelings got evoked, and the yogis saw him as the super soul, and so forth. So there's a beautiful description of how they all saw him, but it also means how he reciprocates with them to satisfy them, because that's how they wanted to see him. And then the point I want to come here is when then the leader of the wrestlers there, Chanura, as he then began to address Krishna and Balaram, he explained to them that, yes, we have heard how both of you, with all the cowherd boys, you always play in the forest, and there sometimes you also wrestle. So we are very curious to see your wrestling skills exhibited, and you have to oblige because it's the desire of the king, and if you satisfy the king, then you're happy. Like almost I'm telling that to the Supreme Lord. But anyway, so but again here also then Krishna obviously, yes, he did satisfy the wrestlers, but obviously not in the way that they expected, and by doing that, then obviously he satisfied all the devotees by killing them. And again, they are also initially, we know, they enjoyed the fighting, so he didn't immediately kill them, but then he actually first instructs the wrestlers headed by Chanura that actually you shouldn't ask such a thing, because to enjoy or something which is against religious principles, it's not good. So for the whole crowd there to see a fight which externally looks irreligious, because it's not between equals, because the most powerful wrestlers in here, the small cowherd boys, it shouldn't be done. But he does that for instructing everyone, and then anyway they fight, and then obviously he enjoys for some time, and then when he sees how everyone is too anxious, then he kills them, and then Kamsa as well, obviously, whom he then drags in front of everyone. One point I wanted to mention, perhaps to conclude with, is that on Friday I mentioned from one purport of in the 9th canto, where Srila Prabhupada explains to a beautiful verse of Lord Vishnu, which he speaks to Durvasa Muni, where he explains to him how he is not able to give him protection, even though we know in the past time how Durvasa Muni had offended Maharaj Ambarish and then was going all the way to Vaikuntha, falling at the Lord's feet, lotus feet, and begged for protection. But the Lord told him that he cannot give protection because he is completely under control of his devotees. And then in the text 64, that's to 4th chapter, 9th canto, he explained that actually he doesn't enjoy his own transcendental opulence and bliss without the company of his devotees. And so in the purport there, Prabhupada, he explains that from this we can understand that actually the devotees can increase the pleasure potency of the Lord. And that seems like quite far out, because we know the Lord, He is full of all potencies, everything comes from Him, and His pleasure potency personified by Srimati Radharani can give Him unlimited pleasure however He likes. But then we hear there that the devotees can increase the Lord's pleasure potency, and that's especially. I wanted to talk on. Forgot one point there. Because the Prabhupada explains in the purport that the Lord comes, like, yeah, we know He is full in Himself, but then because He is unlimited, He also wants to increase the number of His devotees with whom He wants to enjoy unlimitedly. And so that's one reason why those who have turned away from Him come to the material world, that for our sake He comes here, exhibits His pastimes to attract us again to Him. And He also instructs us through Bhagavad Gita, telling us that we should surrender to Him if we want to be happy. And and then Prabhupada explains, and so those who assist Him in this activity to try to turn the conditioned souls back to Him, they can, in that way, they can increase His pleasure potency, because they can increase the number of His devotees. And in that way, they become indirect controllers of the Lord. And this principle a few texts ago was also pointed out by the four Kumaras of His submissive behavior to His devotees, which we see in this pastime also. And like one famous example is when Krishna, that recently from His Grace Radhesham Prabhu, in Bhagavad Gita, when the Lord, we know Bhagavad Gita, then the Battle of Kurukshetra is the climax of the whole Mahabharata, and so you would generally expect the hero of the whole thing to, in a battle, and then they would make an entrance very, like how do you say, in a very chivalrous way, where to attract the attention of everyone as seeing them. Yeah, he's the superhero, he's the most powerful. But then we see Krishna, he enters as the charioteer of Arjuna. So, and by doing that, he shows to us that, okay, yes, I'm the Supreme Personality of Godhead, I'm the most powerful, but the real opulence is not being the Supreme Controller, but the real opulence is being the servant of my devotees. And so that shows, like here, and we discussed in this pastime, that it is teaching us the importance of Vaishnava dealings. So the Lord shows like that, in that pastime itself also, how He told the Brahmanas, for example, I'm ready to chop off my arm if I have offended you, because He takes the blame on part of His doorkeepers. And so, so what to speak of offending devotees, the Lord tells us that I myself, I don't enjoy just my opulence itself. I only enjoy with my devotees, and particularly I enjoy becoming subservient to them and taking the position of their servant. So even the Lord shows that the greatest position is to be the servant of the servant. And and in regarding the I'll quickly tell that and then we'll wind up. So regarding the chariot that Krishna enters as the charioteer, I want to finish with, we know the famous, in Bhagavad Gita also we have the picture of the analogy of us being situated in a material body is just like as being a passenger in a chariot drawn by 5 horses. So that is given actually by Narada Muni in the 7th canto at the end to Yudhishthira Maharaj, when in course of explaining the Varnashrama Dharma. So the verse goes, Aho shariyaram ratam indriyani hayana pishon mana indriyesham vartmani matra tishanam sutam ja Sattvam Brihad Bandaram Ishasrishtam. So Ishasrishtam, this whole material body, which is compared to a chariot, it's ultimately created by the Lord as being by Him being ordered to material nature to make this chariot for us. And what does it consist of? First there's those 5 horses which represent the senses, so we know. And where are they heading to? They're trying to go to their different respective destinations, which are the sense objects. And they are held, drawn to the chariot by the reins, which represent the mind, which is the mana indriyesham, which controls those forces, those senses. And then there's, who is the charioteer? The charioteer, Sutam, is the intelligence. And as you know, we are the soul, we are the passenger. And so, but being in this wild, situated in this wild chariot, we are then in one other verse, Narad Muni tells us how we can. So in the verse before that, he tells actually all the different enemies that we face, like lust, greed, anger, envy, and so forth. And then in one verse he explains how to overcome that. Because Yavan Rikaya Ratam Atma Vashopakalpam Tate Garishta Charana Chayana Nishatam Kyana Simachata Baloda Dadasta Shatra Swananda Tushta Upashanta Idam Vichayat. Where it tells Yavan Rikaya Ratam Atma Vashopakalpam. As long as you have such a body, which consists, has many subordinate parts, which are not fully under your control. Because we see, even in our own body, most things we don't know what's going on, like inside the body, all the different organs and so forth. And so as long as you're in such a body, what should you do? Tate garishta charanachana ya. You should serve the superiors, which he tells again there in the general context of Varnashrama Dharma, but obviously is special for devotees also. For us it means to serve our spiritual master and the senior devotees, and in that way serve Shri Shri Radha Gopinath. And so by doing that, then nishatam jnanasim, then you sharpen the sword of knowledge. And with that sword of knowledge, you can then cut down all these enemies that he had mentioned before. And when having successfully done that, then you're ready to, then you're svananda tushta upashanta, then you're fully blissful, fully satisfied and ready to leave this chariot of the material body. And, okay, I'll quickly conclude. So in terms of this chariot, of this machine we're situated in, I heard my Guru Maharaj also saying, it also, one angle we don't look at it so often, of being in such a chariot, or in modern terms would be being in a car, that it also, this analogy can also be taken as showing how, even as we go into a car, we are still individual persons, and we still do so many activities even in the car. What to speak of then when we go out of the car, then we can do so many more things. So similarly, as long as you are in this chariot, in this car of the material body, we are even in material life, we are so active. What to speak of then after liberation? Then as spiritual beings, we are even much more active. Like Prabhupada, I think that's in beginning of 9th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, he writes how, and understanding that, so that Mayavad, it's not an impersonal ultimate truth, the highest, but that we are spiritual, individual